We're live, 7:05, live for 7:05. Don't even have to walk, don't even have to drive. So, my first question is this is going to be our poll question for tonight. And I have the thumbnail I have up is a front mount intercooler upgrade for a top mount, which we're going to talk a little bit about top mount stuff too first. But I was watching an episode of Street Outlaws, and I see that, and I haven't watched one for a really long time because I kind of lost interest when they were doing pro mod stuff and things like that. That's just, I mean, as much as I like racing and it's cool and the technology is good and they're going really, really fast, it's just not what it was. I like to be able to identify the car that I'm looking at, and some of those you can kind of tell. But to me, I lost interest in NASCAR racing the same too, and a lot of other forms of drag racing. When a guy takes and runs a 69 Camaro, I want to know that it's a 69 Camaro or a 70 Chevelle or a Nova or whatever. I want to know what kind of car it is. I need to be able to identify it. I'm pretty good at that. I recognize vehicles, but the car should be the car. And so my question for tonight is, old Outlaws do you like the new old? Obviously, had started out doing this. You like the old direction, the new old direction of Street Outlaws using fast street cars. So let's see our let's see what our poll seems to think. Before we get into that, I want to talk quickly about the thumbnail. Actually, is a Mazda. I think it's a Mazda Speed 3. And it has a top-mounted intercooler. So I'm going to talk a little bit about top-mounted intercoolers because there's been other applications that have had that. Other Subarus have obviously, Subarus have obviously had that, and the T-Birds, the SVO Mustangs, and the Turbo T-Birds, the Mercurs, anything that that sort of top-mount intercooler. I don't want to say universally, but in my opinion, not really a good idea. I would think that all of the hot engine air would just come up through the intercooler. And having an intercooler is always better than not having an intercooler, but having it there is not a good idea. So what I did on this particular test, and we did this on the chassis dyno, not on the engine dyno, we took off that top-mounted air-to-air intercooler and replaced it with another air-to-air intercooler. And it was sized to fit, in my opinion, probably if it's from CX Racing, it was a kit that they did, and I helped them do the photography and instructions and tests and stuff for it way back. And in my opinion, the core was probably not as big as I would want, but they selected what they selected so that it would fit and not have to cut anything or put things in front of anything. So it from that perspective, it worked fairly well and had enough cooling. It seemed to be better than it was better than the factory core, and did seem to help, I didn't do some stringent repeatability tests, and I didn't do stuff. We didn't take the stuff out on the street, which would have been nice, because I kind of wanted to see what was happening with the air to air under the hood and see. I know that a lot of times the guys will try to, with the Turbo T-Bird and the SVO Mustang stuff, and even the air to air that I had on my little Chevy Sprint Turbo. It wasn't mounted on top of the engine, but it was in the engine bay and had a little ducting going to it. And in my opinion, it was not ideal. And it was replaced. In this case, in my case, in the Sprint, it was replaced by an air to water intercooler with another heat exchanger up front and then a reservoir. And by reservoir, that's a really fancy way of saying an auto parts store one gallon gas can that I just essentially punched holes in to put the fittings in there, because we wanted to use it. We wanted to run ice water at the when we were doing the land speed record stuff at the MAXDA mile. And so that all worked out very well. But the air to air, not ideal, even after making a dedicated ducting for it through I love the fact that it said intercooler on it, and I love the fact that it had a little air, a little opening for it, but I just don't think it was terribly effective. And so it would have been cool on this Mazda to take it out on the street and see what the heat soak was, see what the temperature was, see how, what the response rate and all that was. But we just didn't do any of that on the chassis dyno. It was just run that one, run it. We did run it a couple of times. I remember we ran it a couple of times to see, we were testing heat soak, but more than that, we were testing to see, because obviously on a factory ECU deal, what they'll do is the computer will take countermeasures if the charge temperature gets too high. If the charge temperature gets too high, they don't want detonation, they pull timing, and then so you lose a lot of power. You don't lose a lot of power from what would essentially be a hotter charge air nearly as much as you do. There would be some there, but nearly as much as you would from it going, oh, now look, the charge temperature is too hot. I'm going to pull 2 or 3 or 4 degrees, how much ever it pulls away. And so you definitely would lose power from that. But the thing would be safer, and it is a better way to go. But replacing that, like I did with a Sprint, air to water, good idea. Front mounted air to air, also a good idea, because you're driving around and it's constantly got cold air going through it. Obviously not at a stoplight, but still it has as much or more than the engine compartment top mounted intercooler. And I just never understood why the factory, I mean, you kind of understand it. It's got to be packaging, right? Because they've got to be able to fit all that stuff. And it is cool to like that. I always love the Subarus, especially when they put the big oversized snorkel scoop on them on the WRXs and stuff. And so that you get, all of that airflow in there. Just put a big front mount on it. It's much better. But that does look really cool. It makes the Subarus look mean. So the Mazda Speed 3, a big front mount intercooler, and then a turbo upgrade, obviously, and then turn up the boost, and kind of away you go. So let's talk about Street Outlaws. Let me know what you guys think. We're taking a look at our poll here. 87% are saying yes, that they do like it. I would have to agree. Like I said, I really like. I like the premise of the show. I never thought it was, it's us going out to a secret forbidden area that only we get to go to, and it's clandestine and the police don't know about it, and yet it's on TV, and they're street racing, and they're sticking it to the man. I'm like, that you can't do that. That no TV show is going to allow you to do that. They're not going to take that sort of chance. They're going to get sued. There's going to be a crash. Somebody's going to get hurt. And then that's going to be the end of their world. So we know that that's not the case. And I never thought that it was. All the bickering and stuff, they do that for entertainment, and they do that more to gather a bigger audience, because they don't just want car people watching this. They want other people watching it, because the car community is fairly small. I don't know if you know that, but that's the case. But if you can get other people in that are interested in watching that sort of reality TV bickering, that part I don't like. I actually would like to see more about the cars. I'd like to, they breeze over them. Oh, this is a street car with a 427 Coyote with a Whipple on it. Okay, well, tell me more. Does it have ported heads? What cam does it have? What Whipple does it have? How much boost are they running? Let's get into it, man. What are the charge temperatures? What's the gearing? All of this stuff. What's it shifting at? Show me some data logging. I'd rather have it be that, so that then they could put up all this data on the one and put all this data up on the other. And then you could build excitement doing that, and not just, oh, this guy was talking trash to me and this guy was talking trash. I don't care about any of that. If I was drag racing, I wouldn't even do that. That wouldn't be part of my game. My game would be the thing that makes the car go faster. And that's not part of it. That's just nonsense. But I would like to see more data on it. That would be cool. I like the fact that Farm Truck and Asian are back, because those guys are characters just all by themselves. And they're kind of the OG guys, especially Farm Truck's been doing it a long time, and I liked his boat that he did. I thought that was cool. What is it? The Lamborghini or something like that. The Zamboni Lamborghini thing. That was kind of cool. I like the Hertz that they did. Some of that stuff is really cool. I like guys thinking outside the box. I loved in one of the episodes of Street Outlaws, where Farm Truck and Asian pretended that they were chief, and they took out they had the giant sized laptop that they took out because they were going to do all the tuning. That's just good writing or good preparation on their part. I think that's good stuff. That's fun. But I do like to see the racing, and I like the racing to be good. And it'd be nice if people didn't break. But the reality is that that's all part of it. I mean, lots of guys go out to races, go to no prep races, go to LS Fest or LSS West or whatever, all of these different events. The guys have problems at Drag Week and Rocky Mountain and Sick Week and all those things, and guys have problems. And the good stories are the ones where guys overcome that and they get it all together for the one last pass and do well, and it makes it, and everybody tramps. the stories I like even more than that are where other guys chip in to help them get their stuff done, even competitors and guys go like, look, you're going to make to this round. We're going to make sure that you do. So we're all going to get a tire or a wheel or an axle or a bearing or whatever that's necessary. But we want to make sure that you're at the starting line. Then I'm going to whoop you when we're there, of course, because that's part of the deal. But we want to see you there, and that's the kind of cool stuff. Like I said, this actually is a very small community, and if guys are helping each other rather than trying to, oh, I'm tougher than you and I'm bigger and badder than you, that's just nonsense. So I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about the Street Outlaws thing. Got 107 votes here, 122 people showing. Do you like the new old direction of Street Outlaws? 86% are saying yes, 14% are saying no. And as we know, 86 is the new 100. So we'll take that as a positive sign. Like I said, I watched part of the episode tonight. And the one thing I can say is I really do like the cars that are on there. And 55, 57 Chevys, a couple of Yanko Novas and 69 Camaros and, Chevelles and stuff. Just stuff that you recognize as cars. So it's pretty cool. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, streetcar. Charles, that's what I like about it is they drove all these cars. They didn't bring trailers out, or at least that's the picture that they're painting. Haven't watched it in years. Yep. Yep, the car should be a car. Nevada's in the house. I only care about fast street cars. That's what I can afford. Turbo LS. There's a lot of Turbo LS motors there. You like it for sure. They're running 6 second, 8 miles on the street. Yeah, a lot of these are still over 1,000 horsepower, which, you think about that's a lot for a street car, but it's also very easy to do for a street car. Like getting it, that's the easy part, in my opinion, is making 1,000 horsepower is nothing. But all the rest of the stuff that goes around getting it down that road and driving it and getting it to hook and all that stuff and getting your tune right and getting the traction, having the transmission work. Oh, there's a lot of things that go into going from 1,000 horsepower to doing what 1,000 horsepower can do. And I'm sure some of these cars are quite a bit more than that. I know I heard one guy say, oh, my car is just a low 9 second car. We drive it all the time or whatever. I'm sure that these cars they got to be 8 second cars would be more likely. Keep blowing lifters on the 5.3 with stage 4 TSP cam and 660 valve lift, but OEM lifters, do I need LS7? Why do you have 660 valve lift? Why do you have that much lift? You should not have that much lift on the 5.3. There's no reason to have that. Are you drag racing this thing and running it? And does it have 250 degrees of duration or something? Yeah, they were getting ridiculously fast. They were just drag race cars that happened to have a show about them called Street Outlaws. That was they were pro mod cars, and that, as much as I like pro mod cars and I think that they're cool, and I like the drag week stuff, that's cool, and the fact that they drive them, you can still argue whether or not they're actually street cars. How do you tighten up the rules and not have all Fox bodies? That's hard because that's a good chassis, and then they're pretty easy to make go fast. They're just trying to save the show. It makes sense. We've told them for years that I was talking to Kamikaze when he was out, when we were doing the comparison, we were doing the nitrous test at West Tech. I said, you guys need to go back and do what you did, man. I said, that's what was cool. They need to have cars on there. They don't need to have these rocket ships. Google Plus, I bought OEM lifters for a stock 5.3, but the lifter won't hold the 660 valve lift. Are you sure it's a lifter problem? Do you have enough spring in it? Do you have enough retainer to seal? Do you have all the things that you need? It's my guess, if you keep banging lifters out of this thing, that it's a cam lobe problem. It's a cam lobe stability problem. It's probably not a lifter problem. Just my 2 cents. I like the grassroots street racing, drive to the meet, race, race real cars for real street cars, and drive home. That's what when we used to drive when we used to run the Silver State. That was our definition of a real street car, of a car that, like, when guys would bring their cars on trailers out to the Silver State race, we'd make fun of them because we drove ours out. no, no, now on one occasion I had to trailer mine back because it blew up. But that was after 12 years. So 1 for 12, that's pretty good. But that was our definition, is you need to be able to drive it out there, run it in the race, and be able to drive it home. That's not hard if you have a brand new Corvette. It's just another drive for that kind of car, but that's expensive. We weren't in that group. We were in a group that, like, I had a 5-liter Mustang, a modified one. And so the more that you get it away from stock, the more problematic it can become. Also, for our definition was, you have to, a real street car is not a car that you can drive down the street and go into Cars and Coffee or whatever. It's a car that you would get in and go to New York in from California. So it has to be a car that you use as a car. Like my Mustang, it was the only car I had, so I used it every day. It happened to be fast. It happened to have a Vortec on it. It was set up not for drag racing. It was set up for that sort of top speed kind of event. But I would go out and run it flat out for 42 minutes and then drive it home, except for one time. That's after I put the R trim on it, and that was kind of a mistake. Can you clarify the poll question? They've always used fast street cars. They weren't using fast street cars. They were using pro mod cars. So now they're back to using cars that are actually real cars. A 69 Camaro looks like a 69 Camaro because it's still all steel body. It's still the original thing. Most of these cars have air conditioning in them. They have stereos. They have power windows. They have all kinds of stuff that you would have in a real street car, not a race car that we have added things to so that we can classify it as a street car. Obviously, there's going to be this gray area, but these are probably 8 and 9 second cars maybe, and not 5 and 6 second cars. What they're doing now isn't street racing, it's no prep. They're not doing no prep. The one that they did tonight is not a no prep one. They're also doing that, but these are, like I said, these are real street cars. Or at least that's the premise. And even if it's just a premise, that's better than what they were doing. Racing, what's up? I haven't heard from you for a long time, man. What's going on? Would you think an LS7 lifter will hold up to 7,000 RPM, no more than 7,500? If not, what's the best upgrade over an LS7? We run stuff over 7,000 all the time with the lifters that come from the wrecking yard. So I don't know why that wouldn't work. Like I said, this sort of issue might not be a lifter problem. This might be a cam stability problem. You can't just run any camshaft at RPM just because you don't need a lifter for that. You need the camshaft for that. You need a cam and spring combination, and not just a spring that has lots of spring rate. You need the right spring. You need the right spring frequency. Production, Richard, your channel has motivated me to start my own YouTube channel. Very good. I've ordered turbos and bought projects to adapt them into. Nice. Well, tell us about your project stuff, man. That sounds cool. I've L7 on stage 3 cam, no issue. Maybe you guys aren't listening. If there's no cooling system, there's not a street car. All these cars have radiators and cooling fans and stuff. You are much better off having a camshaft that's 590 lift than you are one having 660 lift. I have a hot rod cam that peaks at 7,000. What have you done to that motor that makes it peak at 7,000? I ask. I'm looking at my cam test now. That's a Truck Norris. Was that a hot rod or a red hot? A hot rod, so it's the smaller of the two. Okay, so let's see where the hot rod cam peaks at. You might be right. The hot rod cam on the 5.3 with 243 heads and the truck manifold peaked at 6,200. So maybe 7,000 would be a lot, unless you have a really short intake runner and ported heads or something. It shouldn't peak at 7,000. Can we agree that one-piece front ends officially make it not a street car? Everybody has their own class rules for that, right? Yes, make sure Outlaws more gearhead oriented. I want the technical information. That'd be cool because they always do out. They always cut out to the guy doing a talk about the car or to Sean from Murder Nova and talking about why they're grudge racing or why these guys are the guys that they're facing against and all of that. They should go through, and especially since these guys are not racing, none of the things in these cars, none of it's top secret. So there'd be no reason why they couldn't go, hey, yeah, this is a 69 Camaro. It has what were the LS, not LS6s? What is this? What is the supercharged, the factory supercharged LS? I know it's an LS9, but I thought that a lot of guys were using those. Maybe they're using crate motors. A lot of those guys have money, so they can put in whatever they want. But it has this engine, it has this cylinder head, it has this camshaft, it has these turbos, it has this transmission, it has this stall speed, it has this gear. Give us some specs. Even if it's just 6 or 8 or 10 things that you list for each one of the cars. Yeah, it's got this tire, it's got this gear, it's got this, it runs this. Have the guy tell you what it runs. He can make it up. We don't care. Just give us something. Oh, it runs 1120s. In what, the half mile? Just give us some tech like that. I think that would be cool. Richard's all the TV that you watch. Small tire slicks. Let's see. Richard, have you done any Gen 3 Hemi videos? Yeah, I have a whole playlist of Gen 3 Hemi videos. Let's see. I'm still scrolling back, trying to find where I was. Man, what happened? Where did this thing go? I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out what happened when I... Okay, here we go. Man, I got a long ways to go to catch up here, guys. What's the issue using a Duramax turbo on an LS? Well, it wasn't designed to make lots of power, but if one of them is not enough for what you're trying to do, then two of them will definitely work, right? Honda Tech's out. I built a car for drag and drive to run 850s. If you want to get into what real street really should be, everything that isn't a cage or simple reinforcement should bolt onto any car with a model represented with no more than one drilling. Again, Admiral, everybody has their opinion about what that is, but you just got to recognize that that's an opinion. I never watched the show. Allie, would you call Acorn to, let's see. Matthew, you can get GT45s cheap. Yeah, and VS Racing has cheap stuff. That's the only reason that I don't I never go to the junkyard for turbos anymore. I found some and just left them there because the stuff that's available that's brand new is so cheap. So you're going to take an 89 turbo TA and put an LV3. It is a better motor. It's a lot better motor. But, guys would flip out. There, Mike, I'm in the process of making my 67 Chevelle run 10s with a stick. It might be a street car. Happy to help. And it was cool. There was a big block. I don't remember if it's a Chevelle or a Camaro, but there was a big block guy had a 4-speed car out there, which I thought was really cool. I think it was a Pro Charge one though. Rocky Mountain Race Week. That's cool. I know Chad's told me about it a few times. Still going to redo the M90 on the 4.8. Do you still believe it'll work with a different pulley? I don't think so. I mean, I think we would have to pulley it up quite a bit just to get it to 400 horsepower, which is what it's at already when it's NA. Maybe trying it on a stock 4.8 would be better so we could actually see some boost. But I think we'd have to spin the ever-loving heck out of the thing to get it to work. I think we were able to make 450 or something like that with a lot of pulley on it, like with a 3-inch pulley on there on the 3800. We would be able to do that on the 4.8, and it would be a much lower boost level because the engine would consume more of that air, so the boost would be down, which would be good. But why put a blower on there to make 50 more horsepower or whatever? Racing, I found a comp XE268, 224, 230. Do you think I could retard the cam 4 degrees on an Explorer engine? I'm browsing cams. I want the one for my engine swap. So why do you want to retard it? You're wanting more power up top or whatever? I just don't know what that will do. I have not tested it. How high would you rev an LQ4 with LS2 factory beehives and a 550 lift cam? I don't know. Where does it float the valves at? That would have a lot to do with what's going on with the camshaft, how stable it is. Steve Morse just had a video of some guy with somebody else's motor, kept breaking the valve train because the cam ramp rate was too aggressive. If you want to run RPM, that has nothing to do with the lifter strength. I mean, that has to be there, obviously. But the key to making that work up at high RPM is valve train stability. And it's not lots of spring rate, and it's not some custom lifter. It's getting the ramp rate on the cam. The cam has to be able to do it. The cam and the lifter have to be in sync, and they have to be stable. And the best way to find that out is on a Spintron first, and then in the car. Drive every day to work and back. That's what I'm talking about with my Mustang. That's what it was. I mean, it was a car that I drove to Texas to Fort Stockton, Texas, and ran in the road and track top speed shit out. And then I loaded up all of my my free tires that they gave me, which are shaved and X-ray tires for the high speed stuff, which was awesome. I had a little toolbox with me and just got in the car and drove out to Fort Stockton. I'm like, I'm here. They're like, where's your trailer and stuff? I'm like, no, this is my trailer. I said, in the trunk, I have an overnight bag or whatever. I'm like, there's no trailer here. This is it. This is the car. I drove out to the Silver State, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks before that or whatever, and drove out and ran it there for 45 minutes. I said, this thing does what it's supposed to do. Which power editors, generally speaking, generate the most heat on an engine dyno pool? I don't know what you mean by generate the most heat. Do you mean the air temperature? Do you mean the water temperature? What is it you're trying to heat up there, or that you're asking whether it heats up or not? Oh, Chuck's Coyote was Chuck's Mustang was a Coyote Mustang. I didn't even notice that. Are there any VWs on the show? Well, Asian has that dung beetle, but they didn't race that though. Just got done building a 4-point for the last month or so. I just need to finish all the welding on the gussets and finalize the install. Then I'm grabbing an Explorer 5-liter to get the new edge running. Cool. Richard, this is a cam specs that keep breaking lifters. What would you run? That doesn't tell me the duration. I need to know what the lift is, and I need to know what the duration numbers at 50 are. What's the new old direction of Street Outlaws? Yeah, they're just using street cars again. They're small tire, they're plated, they're all of that. Google wants to know what style hood pins you guys are using. 660 springs and push rods came with the cam. Plan on shutting down my BTR Stage 3 truck 408 at 6,500. It's not making power there anyways. Cobra just watched a video where he tested different washer fluid for meth injection. It looked like even though the inlet air temperatures were lower, the power didn't increase. It was on E85. Does this prove that you don't need what? I'm going to try another test of water meth injection pre-turbo, and we'll do it without, because this thing had an intercooler, and we'll do it without an intercooler. And I'm told that makes everything work. You don't guys that are thinking that they need a whole bunch of lift are living in the past. You don't need more than 600 lift to make 1,500 horsepower. You don't need more than 600 lift to make 2,000 horsepower. It's not necessary on an LS application. You don't have to have lots of lift. More lift isn't going to be better. In fact, more lift is probably going to be detrimental, because the more lift you have relative to the duration, the less stability your cam is going to have. And even if you made 5 or 10 horsepower, if it only lasts for 3,000 miles because it beats the valve train to death, not a good trade-off. That's my pro tip for tonight. Go with less lift. LQ9 CNC heads 220 cam. Is it a single pattern cam? That's 355 at the wheel. Is this through an automatic or something? What is it? And was it optimally tuned? It seems kind of low to me. A 6-liter with a 220 cam in it and CNC heads should easily be a 550 horsepower motor. The Charles, the low lift truck Norris was not 20 horsepower less. It was 7. Richard, GT40P heads, Victor Junior intake 650 F303 retarded back. You have that cam retarded, and the best LT headers that can possibly be made. Oh, long tubes, 91 correction. Do you think I can get 400 wheel horsepower? No. Nope. I think you should, with that combination, you should be really happy if you got 400 flywheel horsepower. Any idea how much power a stock bottom end 544 valve from a Navigator could make reliably? We've done 1,000 horsepower stuff of that with boost on them, but the one that we did was not a stock bottom end. I'm pretty confident that you could, though, with just ring gap. Lawrence, your camshaft is fine for that 383. If you want to go with more duration, a bigger camshaft on a 383 will make more power than that, but you get into the area where you start trading low speed power. You enjoyed the episode when they showed the find on the issue where the murder Nova was launching bad. Was it a broken suspension part or something? It seems like it was a long time ago. Yeah, Crazy Foot, I agree. I don't think I would pull up to a light next to a guy that has a parachute and want to race him. Although I've driven around on my Civic with a parachute on it, only because we were driving around the streets of Wendover because it was our race car. Let's see. Let's see. What's the highest turbo RPM you've seen? I've never measured the RPM of the impeller. I've never measured impeller speed. Yes, Milo has his new siblings. What the heck happened here again? I got lost again. Let's see. Okay, let's see. I'm happy Street Outlaws is back to street cars. Can you tell me the difference between LS heads, order set of head bolts, and they're all the same length? They did not work on my 05 Escalade. Yeah, you have Gen 3 and Gen 4 stuff. Gen 3 stuff has different length head bolts. Gen 4 stuff has the same length head bolts. You just got to make sure that you get the right head bolts for whether you have a Gen 3 or a Gen 4 motor. If all of them are the same length and don't work on there, then you have a Gen 3. I don't want to open the Explorer motor. Understandable. Daryl, dyno runs should be done at 3 different sites to be sure of the numbers. Maybe dyno roller bearing seizing up and lower horsepower numbers. Are you talking about chassis dyno stuff? Yeah, and the heads are all the same for the LS. All of the heads will interchange and bolt onto all of the blocks. Some of them can't be run because the valves are too big and they'll hit on the small bore, but all the head bolts will definitely bolt on. More Magnum 360s. Yep, I got more stuff coming. Yeah, Todd, let me know. Give me a call. I can call you after we get off of here if you want. But send me a text or something. You still have my number, right? Were you able to run the stock length push rods on the BTR hot rod cam? I don't remember what push rods we had in there. But on every cam that I put in, I always check the push rod length because I do that as a matter of habit while I'm bolting the rockers on. Because as I'm bolting the rockers on, at least, well, and usually more than one of them, usually 2/3 or 3/4 of the valves are on the heel of the cam. So when you're bolting it down, I don't bolt down the ones where we'd have load on the valve. I rotate the motor before we do that. That's why I have the spark plugs out when I'm doing this. So when I go ahead and bolt the rockers down, I start all the rocker bolts just to make sure that nothing's going to happen. And then I'll pick one that's on the heel of the cam and I tighten it down finger tight so that I have 0 lash. And then I count the number of turns. If it's a half turn, we're golden. If it's 1 turn, we're golden. If it's 1.5, I'm starting to get worried. If it's 2 turns, then I'll change the push rod length. And it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm trying to test something and be ultra precise about it, we'll try to make the push rod length adjustment so that they're the same. But if it's just something I'm throwing on there because I'm changing a camshaft or a cylinder head or an intake manifold or whatever we're doing, and I don't care about it, then I don't care about it. And I just bolt it on. But I check it every time, especially when we're doing camshafts. 468 stock rotating assembly, 10.5 to 1. Oh, upgraded pistons. Okay, I was going to say. Cast 502 heads. I don't know what a 502 head is, that because that wasn't ever a production motor. Wine single plane, a BR14 be a good street strip combo. It is. It would be good with a stick car. That camshaft makes good power. You know, good heads would help that combination along nicely, but that camshaft works well. Richard, what did you title your Hemi playlist? I never watched any of your Mopar videos, been mostly interested in GM stuff. It should be under Hemi or Gen 3 Hemi. And there's an NA one and there's also a turbo blower nitrous one. So there's 2 of them. Would you recommend a slightly boosted 4.6 or 4.8 or an NA 6-liter for street racing my buddies? Also, Richard, how big? I don't know what you're talking about. A turbo 4.8 would always make way more power than an NA 6-liter would. Let's see. Some drift guys with the LS swap Porsche Cayennes put a blower in and only picked up 50 horsepower. Did he not put the right blower on there or something? Best place to get tips on porting PI heads. The ones that I've tested that work really well were from the guys at Total Engine Airflow. There's probably lots of guys that have done PI stuff. They've been around a really long time. So there's probably a lot of guys out there that are, go on to some of the groups and find out. I'm sure those guys will tell you. Aren't there blade upgrades? You mean rotor upgrades? The last thing that I would want to do is take a junkyard supercharger that I got for free and try to make it better when the thing that I want to do is just replace it with a turbo. I guess I was asking about both air and water temperature on an engine dyno pull. We monitor both of those. And so I showed that in one of the recent videos. If you take a look at the video that I put up about water temperature and the difference between running the motor at 100 and we ran it as low as 115 or 116 degrees, and then running it at 180 degrees. And then I showed the rise in temperature for all of those pulls. So you can see what that is in terms of water temperature during a pull. But it stayed fairly consistent. The rise did, no matter what the starting temperature was. And then the rise in air temperature is just going to be a function of the turbo, but usually it doesn't rise very dramatically, especially with a good intercooler. For example, would a roots blower heat up the coolant and air the most? A roots blower is less efficient than a turbo. So if you didn't have an intercooler cooling things, it would heat up the air the most. It's the least efficient of all of those. I'm copying the 383 stroker you did against a 6-liter. It made over 600 horsepower using a 459 comp cam. Using LS6. I'm using my LS1. Can't wait to get it back in the car. That was I think that camshaft is actually bigger than a 459. I think I might have said that it was. I think I might have listed as that, but I don't think that it was. Unless my memory serves me incorrectly, which could be the case. Where's my 600 horsepower? I thought it was I thought it was a 239 cam, not a 231. 600 horsepower LS383. Engine 7/8 headers. Where are we at here? Final 51. So that is, yeah, let's see here. Yeah, 56602 or something like that. 601. Test description. Let's see. Oh, great. Just says comp hydraulic roller on it. That's not going to do anybody any good. I honestly think that the camshaft that was used in that, because that had aftermarket pistons in it, so it had more piston to valve clearance, so we could get away with more camshaft. And I think to make 600, it required more camshaft. So I'll tell you the camshaft that I think was in there. I'd have to go back and look at the story that I did and see. So big block, LS solid roller. That's just silly. Yes, I think it was a 289 LR HR14. So it was a 54 461, 239, 247, 624, and a 114. So it was the big brother version of the 459 cam. It was 2 up, in fact. I think that's the cam we used. So I remember it working very well, a very similar cam, but it was from Crane. It was 240, 248. And that's the cam that we used that made really good power on the 408 stroker that we did. Nick, I was actually told by one of the team captains to get the van faster and they would let me be on their team. Still may end up there with my truck. Which team are you talking about, Nick? That's very cool. Just send me a message, man. Total noob question. Man, you don't have to preface this stuff. Just ask a question. There are no bad questions here. What is the big tail on a dynograph when the LS is floating the valves? Well, you can hear it. The motor gets really, really unhappy. And having heard it many times, the other big tell is when we have an air hat on it, when the airflow starts going down, which it does when you have valve float. Otherwise, the airflow continues to increase with engine speed. Even if the power is not increasing, the airflow still increases. Seen people use bottles of heat fuel system treatment for water meth. I've seen that too. I just have never tried it. Guys were telling me about that to mix it with some of our jugs of windshield washer fluid. Is there a general rule on how much nitrous an engine can process in percentage? Normally, we look at 50% as kind of the range for most of the things that we run. We were trying to do on the Big Bang nitrous one, we were trying to do 100%, but that's harder to do. Recals in the house. Nuclear Grizzly, does it have the stock DZ, like the Duntoff cam in there right now? And not the off-road cam? Does it have just the regular 3030 cam in it? You might just try tightening the valve lash on the stock cam. And do you have the chamfered exhaust? If you have that, I just leave all that in there and not worry about a cam change. Or if you're going to do it, take that motor out and put something with aluminum heads on it. I'm looking for a chart for turbo inlet piping and compressor piping. I have 3-inch from the compressor to the intake through the intercooler, looking for 850 horsepower on a Chevy 350, 7,000 RPM. The 3-inch tubing is more than enough to make 850 horsepower with. I used to use heat a lot. It's way cheaper just to buy a 55-gallon drum from VP. Can I use a truck Norris cam in a stock 5.3? Yeah, but you have to have valve springs with it too. Although they do make a no springs required version of that truck Norris. It's common for ported LS heads to hurt bottom end overstock. Take a look at the ported head tests. I got lots of ported head tests up. Yeah, sometimes I have to bust out the catalog on a camshaft that I've only run once in my life. I won't, and it's a cam that I'm not sure that I ran either. So there's a lot going on there. South Australia's in the house, man. It rains 110 days a year. Man, that's a lot. Christian, I don't think Tail cares about either one of those. 03 Avalanche 5.3 with a 513 gears, 35-inch tires. The Chupacabra or the Truck Norris, which one's better? My guess is that you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two, but I'll know fairly soon because I'm going to test both of those. So how's our poll doing? 88% saying yes, they like the new direction. That's good. Let's read Outlaws, guys. We'll be happy to hear that. Like they even know. How much pound are you paying for nitrous? I don't know. I haven't had to buy nitrous in a really long time, so I don't know what it is. I know that it's a lot more now than when we used to buy it. My local tuner told me that my LS swap runs bad and rich when it's warming up because fuel doesn't atomize fully until it's at temp. Is that true? No, that's not true. Your tuner doesn't know what he's doing. Ask him if you go drive over to the dealership and start up a car in the same weather and see if that one runs bad. It's not that. Chris, I saw you're testing using a small liquid cooled intercooler on the LS. We use air to water intercoolers all the time. Yeah. Place here charges $80 for a 10-pound ball. So it's about $8 a pound. $8 to $10 a pound. You seem to make 1,000 horsepower easily. At what point is the intercooler a limiting factor? It's not on the intercoolers that we use. We have intercoolers that will easily do more than that. And I usually try to go oversized on the intercoolers and not undersized, only because I have an intercooler. There's nothing stopping me from running it on a 600 horsepower motor when it has enough to support 1,200. And so that way I can also run it on 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I can also run it on those. So we usually go oversized on that. But at some point you can, and it's fairly easy to measure though. I have an intercooler test up that shows a perfect example of what happens. We ran a ProCharged LS and we ran their ProCharger's standard air-to-air intercooler that they offer with that kit. And then we did the upgrade one. It went from 2.5 to 3 or 3 to 3.5 in and out. And so we also changed the tubing size to go with the inlet and outlet of the core size because I didn't think it made any difference or it didn't make good sense to neck everything down and then have it expand out at the core and then have it neck down again. So we did an upgrade for the core and the tubing size, and it picked up quite a bit of power. 228, 232, 629, 600, 108 LSA, 105 centerline. What lifters should I use? You keep blowing them up. I would get a cam that has less intake duration. That has less intake lift or more intake duration. Both of those will help cure your stability problem, probably. I just don't know because the numbers that you're giving me don't tell me about the stability of the lobe. They don't tell me the stability of the design of the lobe, because you can have cams that have those same numbers and have the lobe stability be wildly different, which is why a guy that has, or a shop or a manufacturer that has a Spintron that can test these things and has tested these things and has tested competitors' things is a really good idea. And you find out all kinds of stuff on a Spintron. The guys from Skunk are a really good example. The Honda stuff that I did with the K24, which I got to get back to now, but they were developing stuff for, 9, 10, 11,000 RPM. These are overhead cam Honda deals, but to find out what is going to work there, you have to have that kind of stuff. You can't just put stuff on there and then break stuff. You have to put stuff on there and find out what the stability is, because it might be that you put it on there and then you have to hone in. It's very close, but you got to hone in on the spring and the rate and the frequency and the installed height and the coil bind clearance and the retainer style and the rocker or the lash adjuster or the follower style. There's a lot that goes into making all of that work. It doesn't just bolt on and work. It does at 6,000, but it doesn't really at 8 or 10,000. Supercharger or turbo is actually cheaper on a year or more basis. Chris, 1,000 wheel horsepower. Lots of guys are using front mount air to airs. You can use that on there. You can put an air to water on there. Lots of guys that are drag racing those things are putting them in the passenger side for guys that are trying to make serious horsepower. But 1,000 wheel horsepower is still well within the realm of putting a big air to air on the front. Recal the last time you bought nitrous from Super Shops. That was a minute ago. Force, what are you saying James's name for? He's a good tuner. James is a good guy. I like James. I've had I shared moonshine with James. He's a good guy. Sounds like a diesel engine trying to start up without glow plugs. Yeah, E85 or methanol will be more problematic on startup. Richard, do you think filling a pair of truck exhaust manifolds with muriatic acid several times would enlarge them enough to make a noticeable difference on a dyno? What I would recommend is you porting them first to see if they make any difference on the dyno, to see if it's worth going through all that trouble. But that kind of stuff has been done. I just don't know. It may have been done for guys that might be looking for 1 horsepower. And usually they do that after they've done other stuff to it. And then and then actually fill it full of water and then throw it outside and let it rust up so that it looks like it hasn't been modified. I don't know how to tell that from the specs of cams. You don't know that, and quite honestly, the people that sold you the cam would not know if there's stability in that load profile either, unless they've actually run it. And most times they haven't. Would a 31, so less than 3 feet by a foot by 3-inch core intercooler would be enough to 500 or 600 horsepower on turbo 5.3. That core sounds like it's a little small for a turbo 5.3. I was just correcting a previous post about his name. He is my tuner also. Best. Are you talking about James? Yeah, James is good people. Don't they put a thick paste through them? Yeah, Extrudone it's actually silly putty is what they use. It's silly putty impregnated. It's an industrial grade of silly putty impregnated with silicon carbide. They can also do other things. They do industrial diamonds as some of the abrasive media. They do it in much more liquid form, so they can do water jetting with it, but with so that they have material in it also that they can do so that the edge finishes nice. They really do some. Back when I was doing some stuff with those guys, they really did really cool stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and close out our poll because it's almost time to go. 1 more minute. We're gonna end our poll at 87% are saying they like. I'm a fan too. I'm not a fan, but I I did like the direction of the new one. I like the fact that they're using streetcars, and that's kind of cool because I would much rather watch real cars race. Like I would like watching an LS6 Chevelle and a stage 1 Grand Sport car or something. That kind of thing. I like that stuff. But I'd also like watching a Coyote race against a Gen 3 Hemi Challenger. Or, yeah, Challenger or Charger. Chris, happy to help. Thanks for answering my question. Happy to help. Did you check the Mercury Marine out? I didn't. I didn't get your Sean. I didn't see any email from you. So I'm gonna check my spam and see if it came. Is the Slant 6 still in the works? Yes, it's still sitting in my shop, waiting to be reassembled. Clint, I give my email out all the time on these live feeds for people that have questions. The Slant 6 I'm excited about running too, although I don't I don't have high hopes for like massive power with that thing. Especially after Dulcich has hurt his so many times when running the Torque Storm on there. Torque Storm. Richard, any chance you might do the 3? What is the 3.5 Slant 6? I don't know what that is. Would love for you to look at the log and see if you see any abnormalities. Or are you talking about on some dyno run or something that you did? just got to make sure that the cam is in right, and then you got to make sure that you have enough. You got to make sure about the timing and the air fuel. And I don't know, maybe that power number that you gave me, if this is the one that I'm talking about, power number that you gave me, is it on giant sized tires and is it on a trans that has a really high stall speed converter and that's screwing everything up? Thanks for sharing what worked for you or doesn't. Sometimes it's that too. That happens, but that's how we find out, though, right? Data log and HP tuners. I don't use HP tuners, so I don't know really what I'm looking at there. Can you do a turbo sizing video? I can. The stuff that's up online is actually better. The Matchbot and if you look at the stuff on Garrett's site, they have really good stuff there. The problem that I have, and I do want to do a compressor map video just to talk about what you should look for and why you should look for it and how it relates to the NA power output. I want to do that. Like I said, there's really good stuff available online already, but I want to do a video on it just so people kind of understand it. It's kind of compressor maps for dummies, and I say that not because of the people that I'm talking to, but because the person that's doing the talking, that it's just easier for me to understand it this way. I usually don't understand things like at an engineering level, but lucky for me, I don't have to get the thing done that I need to get done. Like I don't need to know how you make camshafts. I don't need to know how the programming goes in to actually machining the camshaft to understand how camshafts work. And luckily that's helped me out a lot all through the years. The 3.5 I'm talking about is in the 606 to 10 chargers. That's not a slant 6 though, right? I thought that we were talking about a slant 6. And on that note, it is time to go. Well, again, that's not a slant 6. I'm pretty sure it's a V6, but that's okay. I've never done anything with that. And quite honestly, I haven't run a slant 6 yet on the engine dyno because all I did was take it apart to find out that it was broken. I just haven't fixed it yet. But I will, I promise. I will see you guys all in the morning.